Back. Let's go ahead and continue. All right, let's talk about naming our objects. Okay, yeah, you definitely want to get in the habit of naming objects. Otherwise, you'll end up with basically a complete mess. For example, this would be known as a complete mess. If you go here, select by name, or that is your hierarchy. So that's your H key on your keyboard. If you hit that, this pops up. Select from scene, and it kind of lists everything in your scene, which is this is our geometry. We have no shapes in there, and we have nothing else. I don't think we have a shape in there. Let's deselect that. Yeah, there's nothing in there, so I'm going to unselect that. We have no lights or any other objects in our scene, but I'll go ahead and place them so you can see what happens. But notice, we have box 1, 2, 3, 4, pyramid 1, 2. This could get really complicated. And you always want to get in the habit of naming your objects because you never know what team you may be working with. For example, if you're modeling a whole set that a texture artist needs to work on, the last thing he wants to do is when he opens up his hierarchy and sees nothing that has been named, he'll probably be pretty pissed. So, for example, he needs a texture maybe light pole number 2. But obviously we don't know what cylinders from a light pole, and like I said, it could be complex, and maybe that light pole needs to have a certain different texture or something. So just like I said, it's always good to get in the habit of naming your objects. So I'll get back to that hierarchy tool. By the way, it's your H key, or you can click right here to get to that. All right, but naming your objects. So, for example, I can click on one of these or anything. I'm going to click on a box here. If I go to my modifier, the blue rainbow or whatever, the modify panel, here's the name of the actual geometry. It's box 001. And obviously you can say it's at its base form. It's not converted to anything. It still has its parameters, so we can still adjust it, whatever, the length, width, or if we want to add segments to it, and so forth. Not that I would ever add segments like that, but you never know. Depends on what you're modeling, I suppose. I'm going to keep that back at 101. 111 on everything. Alright, but to rename the object, just go ahead and, highlight here, and we can call this, say, building 1. That is building number 1. And then I can, obviously rename these as I go. Or, in most cases, even when you when you name something, and if you actually hold down shift to duplicate it, notice we have these clone options. I'll explain instance and references later, but say I need to make like 5 copies of it, it will name them in order. So there's building 1, building 02, 3, 4, and so forth. It might be good to actually put a 001, that way things stay in increments. So if I were to control Z that, right, and say it said put a 00 in front of that, I'm sure if I shift drag this, made a couple more copies, it would do it in order. There's 2, 3, 4, and so forth. Alright, I'm just going to control Z. I'll let you know that's how you can name your objects. Just click and name it whatever you decided to call it. I'm just going to call this building 2 or something. Or we can come here and name this I don't know, maybe that was the Luxor pyramid. I don't know if I'm even spelling pyramid right. No, hell no. I'm not even close. It's PRA pyramid. I guess that's close. Is that what it is now? Pyramid. Yeah, I guess that's good. Anyways, but yeah, that's how you name your objects. Alright, let's talk about grouping objects now. Alright, so for example, let's unhide everything. Say for example I need to group certain objects together. I needed to group, let's say my teapots, and if I hold down, I believe, control, I can grab my buildings as well. And if I hide unselected, I'm going to right click hide unselected, so I'm just working with my buildings and teapots. I can actually either highlight them like that and go to my groups and just call it whatever group I need to. I can call this whatever. We'll just say group 1. And now they're all part of one group. Now if I need to unbreak the group, all you gotta do is go to, with it being selected, you can go to group and then ungroup. Or like I said, you can explode the group and break them apart. I can come back and group them back up. Or like I said, if you need to add something, let me add another building to the group. Say it's a new building I added in. I believe you can just, this is a little tricky, I keep forgetting how to do this sometimes. I'm going to grab this object, and I believe we can open the group and then hit control and select it and go back to group. And hold on, we don't want to, we can attach it to the group. I think that's how it works. Yeah, there it goes. And now he is part of, let me close that, or let me deselect that now. I think it's still exploded. Let's go to group and assembly, ungroup. Like I said, I always get confused. I know there's a way to do this. Oh, sorry, I gotta close it. There we go, now it's closed. Let's try that again, just make sure we got that cleared. I'm gonna go ahead and throw another box in here. Alright, so we're gonna grab the group itself, which is not connected to the green box there. So I'm gonna go to group, and we're gonna go to open, and then I'm gonna go to group, or let's go ahead and select him, go to group, attach him, and then we can go back to group, and which I did attach. Oops, you gotta attach it to the group. There we go. Now he attaches. And there we go. Now obviously we have to go back to group. Let me deselect. And can we close the group? Group. Close the group. I guess you have to select the object again to be able to close it. Alright. Hopefully that made somewhat sense. You know what, let's try it a third time because that didn't go as smooth as I thought. So I'm going to add another box. Alright, so this is the group. Third time's the charm. We're going to go group, open the group, and then we're going to select on the object, go back to group, attach it. Now if we need to close the group, make sure we can either grab one of the objects, group, and close it, and now it's all part of one group. No. Obviously we didn't get that right neither. This is ridiculous. Hold on. Got the group. I'm going to open the group. Right. I'm going to select him, the new piece here, and I'm going to go to attach and attach it to this group, and now he's part of the group. Alright. I think I got that. Wow, that's where we didn't even have to close it. Okay, so now in order to close the group, I can click it, group, close, and he's part of the group. Wow, that was weird. That was tedious there. Anyways. Alright, but anyways, that's how we name our groups, open groups, close groups. And the reason you want to group things up is when you're working on a scene. For example, it could be like for your first lab eventually, for my class, you'll be creating a room. You might build a table that has some wine glasses and a plate or bowl of fruit, and you might want to highlight everything and group them all together and just call it table, and everything within the table is grouped together. Hopefully that made somewhat sense. Alright, let's go ahead and reset. Let's talk about, let's see, how to actually move certain objects. I know I should have talked about this earlier. I'm going to go ahead and throw a box in my scene. I'm going to hit Alt-W. I'm going to hit F4 so you can see my edges. Alright, general rule. Alright, obviously when I click on my object here, you can see my gizmo. You got your Z-axis, Y-axis is left and right, X-axis is back and forth. Notice if I mouse over the center of the axis point, it highlights yellow. That's how you can move it around the world axis and not be conformed or constricted to a certain axis point, being, the Z up and down, or Y, left and right. So like I said, if I highlight in the center, I can move it all around. Now that little technique plays a big factor when you're modeling stuff or moving around in 3D. Same thing with the rotate tool. Obviously I can rotate it on its axis point. Around here on the, I believe that's the, what is that, the Y? Yeah, the Y-axis. And then of course the red is the X-axis. And then if I highlight in the center, if I move in the center, I can rotate it around. Now let's get one thing straight though. I want to point this out. Whenever you're modeling, say for example a table, and I guess before I explain that, let me talk about the scale tool. Notice we can scale it up, scale it on the Y, scale it on Z. Now this one you have to be very careful about. And you need to get used to the fact of scaling uniformly, which is when you highlight everything in the center, which turns yellow. I can zoom in out, and that's uniform scale. So everything's evenly scaled up and down. Please pay attention to that, because a lot of people, when they first start modeling, or a lot of my students, they'll assume that they'll grab the ends here, and it's not the center of the scale, so it skews it in a lot of ways. So you can't really tell until you zoom out and notice that it skewed it. It's not uniform scaling it. So be careful about that, because you're going to actually use that a lot, the uniform scale. Alright, anyways, back to what I was talking about. When rotating your object, you have to be aware. For example, if I'm going to do a quick little crappy table here. I'm just going to scale this down a little bit. Let's pretend that's like the tabletop. And I'm just going to throw some cylinders. Let me go for my top viewport. And, we got some simple cylinders, and I'm just going to duplicate a few. When modeling, you always work on the model on its world axis. Basically, I'm rotating and walking around the model. You never want to move the model out of place or rotate it while you're still trying to finish it. Otherwise, you might actually, move it at an angle, and when you're first starting 3D, you can see my angles are all screwed up. Let me Z back on that. You might accidentally move it, rotate it, and then, things get a little weird, and when you're not used to 3D, it can get really messy. If that happens to you and you actually move something like that, and now it's not right and orthographic, and it's kind of off balance, you can actually, obviously we can select the object, and I believe you can hit 0 and, add 0 to all the Z's and Y axes down here, and it will center everything back up for you. Usually what you want to do is, when you're done modeling it and you feel like you're satisfied with it, then you can, obviously group it, whatever it is, call it a table, and then decide to angle it and position it in your world or room. Let's pretend I have some kind of wall or something, and then maybe it's a corner table. I'm just going to this side. So like I said, when you're done with the model and you want to position it a certain way, usually you rotate it afterwards. And that goes with all models. So get in the habit of that, first build the model or build the object or whatever it is, and then make sure it's complete before you start rotating it. So you don't, like I said, during the modeling process, you don't want to mess with the rotation. Unless, like I said, unless, like it's say like a part of a complex object where it automatically needed to be rotated somewhere. You know, maybe it's like an engine block or something you're working on, and you know, maybe the pistons had to be at a certain angle right off the bat. But anyways, just keep that in mind. All right, so yeah, let's talk a few more things here. So, you know, we introduced you to the, you know, move, rotate, and the scale. Notice everything is a group here, so I can scale it all at once and so forth, or scale it this way. Be careful because you're going to skew things. But, you know, once something's grouped together, you can uniform scale it in, scale it out, so forth. All right, one thing also I want to mention was about your rotate. This little guy right here, the angle snap toggle, this is very useful. If you turn him on, when you click something, it actually rotates in increments, so it locks in place. So if you need to turn something 90 degrees, it's a little more helpful having that angle snap toggle on. Maybe I had to rotate it this way, not that I ever would, but you know, obviously I can do it in 90-degree angles. As to where if this was off, it's kind of more manually, and that's can be a little tougher trying to notice. I can't really hit 90 degrees accurately by manually trying to do it. So I usually turn that on, or you know, if you're really used to what, you know, angle you're turning it on, you can actually manually type, you know, maybe it needs to be 90 degrees, you know, or it can be negative 90 and so forth. But chances are you will be manually doing a lot of stuff, or manual rotations. So keep that in mind, your angle snap toggle, very useful. Alright, one of the last few things I want to talk about, possibly be your local and view accesses. So for example, your view is, you know, it's the whole view, the access view of whatever view you're working in. Now local, like I said, you'll be switching back and forth from this a lot, and I want to kind of explain that thoroughly. So let's, for example, I'm just going to throw like a box down here, and now I'm actually going to convert that to a poly. And don't worry, you'll learn about converting polys and stuff when we get to the Lab 1 lesson video. Alright, so I'm going to just move that down, the verts. Now, so you understand what I'm talking about here, I'm going to actually click on that object, which is, we'll say like it's a podium or something where people give speeches. Try to imagine that. Alright, so I'm going to go to create, and I'm going to grab a box and auto grid it. And I'm going to auto grid it. As you can see, it turns and auto grids to that angle, and we'll just say this is like a little book. Alright, so it's on that angle. Now notice if I need to slide, you know, that book up the podium, notice it kind of goes through. Or if I went to my Alt W, I'd have to, you know, in my left viewport, I'd have to kind of manually kind of position it, and that could work, but sometimes, you know, that could be a little tedious if you're trying to get really accurate. So I'm going to Control Z. But notice if I actually click on the book itself, switch to my local view, or local access, now my pivot changes to the access point of the position of that geometry. So now I can actually, you know, move it and slide it on its local axis. Now this works when you're scaling things too. So for example, and you'll see this in another video, if I threw like say a box, and for example I actually had to rotate it slightly. Now if I needed to scale it, notice I'm in view, so if I scale it, it's gonna skew it. Really weird. You know, so I can't just technically, you know, try to scale it the right way, so you'll have to switch to its local axis, so which it follows the angle, the way the geometry is positioned. So now I can scale it on its local axis. Now this will make more sense when you are starting to model certain things, like maybe a couch and its pillows, or the back of a couch, headboard, or, you know, whatever, you know, calls for to be modeled, I suppose. But like I said, in lab video 1 modeling a room, I explained this pretty thoroughly, so hopefully it'll make sense, and feel free to watch that video next if you'd like. Alright, I think that's pretty much the breakdown, you know. I mean, we could spend hours and hours on all this, all these different tools and stuff, and, lights and, our shapes, but you'll learn all this stuff as you go on doing the other tutorials I created. Like I said, each and every one, even if it's a simple lamp tutorial that I have, trust me, if I can get you to model a lamp or even a wine glass, I can get you to model a leg of a character, or, the fingers of a character, the neck of a character, because they're all basic shapes. You just gotta look at the world in 3D. Alright, but like I said, usually my videos, for the fundamental stuff, I tried to get the new 3D artists, such as yourselves, if you're new to it, to take gradual steps. That way, if you understand the basics, that way you can attack more complex objects. I mean, basically, the bottom line is if you can't model a wine glass, then don't try a character yet. Obviously, if you gotta crawl before you walk, I guess, whatever that analogy that is, but hopefully that somewhat makes sense. So let's hopefully let's we'll get you to start understanding the concepts more about moving in 3D. Anyways, I think I'm talking too much and I'm half asleep here. But yeah, definitely stay tuned. We got some more video tutorials coming. As of right now, there's a ton of them up, actually. I'm working on the P51. Right now it's in part 7 if you want to check that out. But if you're first starting off, I have some on dressers, lamps, chandeliers, that teaches all kinds of different techniques, your basic techniques. And if you do those, I'm sure it'll get you off to the right track. Alright, otherwise, I look forward to hearing from some of you guys. Anyways, peace out, I suppose. Alright, take care.